Hi, welcome. My name is Sonia Kang. I'm an associate professor of organizational behavior and HR management here at the University of Toronto and the host of the For the Love of Work podcast. I'm an expert in careers, identity, diversity, and inclusion. Welcome to my office hours. Quick, give me a question so I can test if this hiring manager will be a good boss. One thing that bosses almost always ask is about mistakes. So they might say something like, tell me about the last time you made a mistake. What did you do about it? How did you fix it? Flip that back to them. So say, when's the last time someone on your team made a mistake? And what did you do about it? And you're really looking to see how they reacted when someone did something wrong. Are they super critical? Did they basically fire the person, or did they work with them to try and fix it? So you're really looking for someone who creates a psychologically safe workplace, who has a growth mindset, and who's going to work with you if you make a mistake. Another thing you might ask about is, what did you do the last time you took time off of work, right? So you're looking to see A, do they ever take time off of work? And B, what are some of the things that they're interested in? Often people who are in these kinds of leadership positions get there because they love working and they work all the time. And not everyone is going to jive with that. What is the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, and do I need both? Yes, I would say it's great to have both, and that can either be, separate people who are mentors and sponsors, or it could be the same person who acts as both a mentor and a sponsor for you. A mentor is really someone who's there to kind of give you advice and guidance and help you in your day-to-day, help you deal with things that are going on in the present. A sponsor, on the other hand, is someone who's really connecting you to opportunities and really thinking about the future. They're helping you to shape that next step or, the next 5 years, 10 years in your career. I feel like I've stagnated. How do I know it's time to shift focus in my own career? This is totally normal. People change over time. And so, of course, the things that you're interested in, the things that motivate you are also going to change over time. So if you feel like you're really stagnating in your career, it's a good time to kind of take a step back and think about your goals, think about what interests you, think about what's really kind of energizing you in the moment. And then you can talk to your boss, you can talk to mentors, sponsors about kind of finding different tasks that help you to meet those goals in your current team. Or if that's not possible, then use that as a way to kind of find opportunities outside of your team that help you to meet those new interests and goals. I think everyone in their career goes through a period of time where they feel like they're stagnating, and that's really a signal to you that it's no longer challenging, it's no longer exciting. Some people kind of just try to push through and continue on, and that's where you start feeling really burnt out and you hate your job and you want to leave, rather than going through the kind of, mild discomfort of actually thinking about what you want to do, talking to your boss about it. So it's much better to switch it up and go into something that's more exciting to you than it is to kind of just push through and stick with something that you don't like anymore. I hate people. Is there a way to be good at and grow in an extroverted job even though I hate people? And have I mentioned I hate people? So this is a hard one because anytime you're in a job that doesn't fit with your personality, it really forces you to act like someone you're not. And acting like someone you're not requires a lot of self-control. You're going to feel super tired. You might start resenting your job. The first thing I think is to make sure that you acknowledge that that doesn't match with your personality and then find other things that you can focus on. So maybe in this job, you want to focus more on developing your technical skills, or maybe you want to focus on, let's say, written communication rather than verbal communication, and just really find other ways to focus your energies to make sure that you're still contributing. The good thing about this particular problem is if you're in an extroverted job, the chances are that your colleagues, your boss, everyone around you is going to be talking all the time, and they're not even going to notice necessarily that you're not talking. In this job, I think finding ways to communicate, to work around having a chat with people all day long is totally possible. But if you find that that's not possible, then it's definitely time to kind of acknowledge the fact that you're in a position that doesn't work for you, doesn't work for your personality, and then look for something else that does, that's a better fit for who you are. What is resume whitening, and can I, the employee, do anything to alleviate the issue the next time I'm job hunting? So resume whitening is basically anything that someone does to conceal or downplay some aspect of their identity when they're applying for a job. And they do that to avoid anticipated discrimination. So an example might be a Chinese woman named Jing putting an Anglo name on her resume like Jill. It could be someone who has a lot of great experience working on the Black Students Association, taking out the Black and just putting the University Students Association. So in both of those cases, you're toning down or removing any information that could kind of connect you to a specific racial group. So on the employee side, really you can do whatever you feel comfortable with, experiment with your resume, apply, with different names if you want to kind of test out the waters. You can connect with people who have worked at the company, who share identities with you to see what their experiences are. If you've had bad experiences at a company based on your identity, you can share that information as well. You can look at places like Glassdoor. You can collect all that information and really tailor your resume however you feel comfortable. But really the onus needs to be on employers to make sure that those kinds of demographic characteristics and identity and group memberships aren't creating differences in terms of who's hired and who's promoted in those organizations. It could be things like evaluating resumes horizontally rather than vertically. So that means, let's say I look at a job application, and I see something that I like up at the top, like, they went to the same school that I did, then something happens called the halo effect, where all of a sudden looking down the whole resume, I'm like, yes, this is all awesome. Instead, if you look at resumes horizontally, it means that I'm looking at everyone's education all at once, disconnected from the rest of the resume. I'm looking at everyone's job experience all at once, disconnected from the rest of the resume. And that way, your biases about one part of the resume don't have a chance to kind of influence your evaluation of the rest of it. Isn't quiet quitting just doing your job in a way that's better for your mental health? What's the big deal? When I first heard about quiet quitting, I was also like, okay, so people just aren't doing the parts of their job that they're not being paid to do. And I agree that in and of itself, that's not a big deal. But it is a symptom, I think, of a deeper problem. So if you find that you're quiet quitting, right? If you find that there's a lot of demands on you that you don't feel like you're being compensated for, I think the issue is that you're working in an environment where you don't really feel like you have the opportunity to just say no, right? So you have to kind of do it secretly. Quiet quitting is fine, right? But it's better if people are loud about this, right? That they're giving the feedback to their employer that these are things that you're asking us to do that we actually don't have time to do. It's taking away from our actual jobs. So talk to your colleagues about this. If you find that you're quiet quitting, they're probably quiet quitting too. And this is a time to give that feedback to your boss, to the company, and say, look, these are all the things that you're asking people to do that we're not being paid for, we don't have time to do. And either they can, formalize that and move things around so that you are being compensated for those, or they can hire someone else whose job it is to take over and do those tasks. Sometimes I worry I don't belong at my company. Do I just need to fake it till I make it? First thing I'd say is that thinking like this and having these kinds of imposter thoughts are really common. But I would say that imposter thoughts are really more about the environment that you're finding yourself in. So, people aren't including you in conversations. They're not asking you for your feedback. They're not taking your expertise seriously. Of course, you're going to feel like you don't belong. And that's what those imposter thoughts are. They're the signals that you're picking up from the environment, from your colleagues, from your boss about how you fit in that company. You can try to develop those skills where you feel like you're deficient or you feel like you're not getting good feedback on. But if you're faking it for too long, you're gonna get burnt out. It's super tiring to pretend that you're someone or something that you're not. And it's telling you that the company isn't set up in a way to welcome people like you. They're not really doing a good job to make sure that they're taking advantage of your skills or welcoming you into the community. And so that's a signal to you that you've been faking it too long, and maybe it's time to move somewhere where you don't have to fake it at all. How much small talk is too much small talk before a meeting with a potential new boss? You have to pay attention to how the other person is engaged in the conversation and really take your cue from them in terms of how the conversation is going to go. So if you get into a meeting with a new boss and they're like straight down to business, this is not an opportunity for you to talk about your own personal life or what you did on the weekend. This is an opportunity for you to also get down to business. If you're in a meeting with someone who does want to talk about their personal life, what the weather's like, what's going on in the news, you can take that cue and kind of engage to the same level that they are. Is it true that men and women approach job hunting differently? In general, men tend to be more overconfident than women. Notice I didn't say confident here, I said overconfident. So what that means is that men tend to require less evidence that they're qualified for a particular position than women do. So let's say you had a job advertisement that had like 10 requirements. Men, they're like, I fit like 3 or 4 of these. I'm going to just shoot my shot and try for this. Women, on the other hand, even if they have like 8 or 9, are like, ooh, I don't have that last one, so maybe this isn't the right job for me. I'm going to wait a little while before I apply. When you look overall in terms of the general pattern of men and women applying for jobs, that tends to mean that men are more likely, in general, to apply for these kind of high-level, more challenging jobs that require kind of growth into that opportunity than women. So in some of my own work, we've noticed that not only does that affect the way that people are looking for jobs and applying for jobs, but it also affects advancing in your career, so applying for things like promotions. So for example, when you apply for a promotion, around 75% of men apply for those opportunities, whereas only 25% of women apply. And that's because that opportunity is something that we would call an opt-in. So it requires you to actively put your hand up and say hey, I'm gonna apply for this and I'm confident and I know I'm gonna get it. That kind of situation favors men compared to women. So in our work, what we did is we switched up that opportunity and that framing to make it an opt-out. So what that meant was that everyone who was over a particular application threshold would be in the competition, would be considered, always with the opportunity to opt out. In that situation, we were able to completely eliminate that gender gap. So both men and women were competing around 75% of the time. So it is true that men and women approach job hunting differently, but it's also true that companies can do something about this. What's the trick for landing my boss's job without, sabotaging their career? In order for you to get your boss's job, your boss needs to have a new job. So part of this, I think, is figuring out what it is that your boss does and figuring out what your boss's boss does or what someone in a higher level position does, and then preparing yourself to do those tasks or, whatever the responsibilities are that your current boss is doing, while also supporting them to develop the skills that they need to move up in the ladder as well. So instead of sabotaging, you should really be thinking about working with them to advance both of your careers. But really, this is an opportunity to think about what they do, why you want to do it, and what their ideas are for the next step as well, and then work together to push them out of that position so that you can take it over. Well, that's the end of my office hours today. If you want to read more about career development and HR best practices, click the link below to the Rotman Insights Hub. Thanks for stopping by.